This is the final interaction between the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Senate Appropriations Committee before the passage of the 2022 national budget. The committee has invited INEC chairman to table before it the Commission's projected expenditure for the 2023 general elections for the purpose of capturing it in the 2022 budget, billed for passage by both chambers of a National Assembly on Tuesday, December 21st. INEC chairman presents the sum of 305 billion naira as projected expenditure for the 2023 general elections.
But for the 2023 general election, as I said, we made a submission on the basis of the 100 billion as one line item, plus the 40 billion for regular budget in the 2022 appropriation bill, and then there is the outstanding 205. What we have done is to look at activities that we need to conduct before the general election.
Professor Yakubu also gives an update on the controversial Ekiti East by-election, which has been plagued by violence during 4 unsuccessful attempts.
But as you are aware, the by-election was disrupted by sheer act of violence. You know, voters were killed on the queue on election day. A police officer was killed at a polling unit on election day. We simply suspended the election indefinitely because this INEC will never reward bad behavior. With Ekiti governorship election coming up in June, Ekiti East one state constituency may be a dress rehearsal for the Ekiti governorship election. So we may end up conducting the election in that constituency 5 times because it may be disrupted. Now the thinking of the commission at present is that since the Ekiti governorship election is holding in June, we should just wait and combine the state constituency and the governorship election in June instead of going twice.
Meanwhile, there is no word yet on the status of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill presently before President Buhari for assent. The 30 days deadline stipulated by the Constitution for the President to respond to the bill expired on December 19th. President Buhari is expected to either assent to the bill or write to the National Assembly explaining his decision to withhold assent. Linda Kibe, Channels Television News.
Indeed, the budget, yes, the 305 billion naira budget requested by the INEC chairman for the elections, the upcoming general elections, and as well as a few other elections which will be coming up in different parts of the country, is the subject of our discussion this morning. Let me introduce the guests first. We have with us this morning Mr. Festus Oke, who is a National Commissioner at INEC. He's also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
I cannot but ask first, though, how much of a setback is this President's refusal to assent to the Electoral Act as amended?
We've made it very clear severally that there are very progressive innovations in the bill that was forwarded to the President for assent, and that it will be to the glory of the electoral process and the joy of Nigerians if some of those amendments come into play during the 2023 elections. But as you know, the Commission is a federal executive body. The power of legislation resides with the National Assembly, and the power of assent resides with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So our hope is that whatever challenges there are in terms of some of the provisions in the amended bill, it should be resolved quickly. So that the Commission can plan appropriately. As you are aware, the guidelines and the regulations and the manuals of the Commission are derived from the provisions of the Electoral Act. So as of today, we operate on the basis of the extant law, on the basis of the existing electoral legal framework. So if there's an amendment too close to the election, it creates its own challenges, creates its own dynamics, and also creates its own problems. So we will prefer a situation where some of these issues will be resolved quickly. Very unfortunately, the issue of direct primaries has completely overshadowed every other thing that has been provided in the Electoral Amendment Bill. And this is very, very unfortunate. This is because if you look at the bill, you will see that provision has been made for the early release of funds to the Commission. You will also see that there has been provision relating to the electoral transmission and collation of results. You will also see that there has been an amendment of the law allowing the Independent National Electoral Commission to review election results that have been declared fraudulently. The bill also provides for a situation where only the Federal High Court will adjudicate on pre-election matters. So there are very progressive provisions in the amended bill. Unfortunately, as I said, the issue of direct or indirect primaries has overshadowed every other issue relating to the bill.
So this is certainly a setback for INEC.
Well, it's not a setback for INEC, but I believe that the Nigerian people need to clear some of these issues in the electoral legal framework. So much work went into the making of this particular bill because the INEC, the Senate Committee on INEC and the House Committee on Electoral Matters constituted a technical committee. The Commission was part of that technical committee. The Federal Ministry of Justice was part of that technical committee. Some civil society groups and organizations were part of the technical committee. And even during the technical committee, both houses gave me the privilege of chairing the technical committee. So I understand the quantum of work that went into the making of this particular bill. But we are hopeful that the issues involved, since what the issue involved is a one-line item, will be resolved quickly, and then we should have a new electoral legal framework. But as of today, the Commission is preparing on the basis of the existing electoral legal framework.
Let's go to what the INEC chairman who appeared before the House committee to ask for, 305 billion naira. That has taken a lot of Nigerians by surprise, because it would seem that increasingly every year our budget to conduct elections seems to be rising at an astronomical rate. How does INEC intend to justify this expenditure to Nigerians?
Well, I think the issues are very, very clear. The first was that there was a provision of 140 billion to the Appropriations Committee from the executive. As I pointed out, INEC is a federal executive body. Now, out of that 140 billion, 40 billion was for our regular budget, which keeps on decreasing almost on a yearly basis. So the first 100 billion, we classified it as the first tranche for our 2023 general election. Now, as you are aware, we are going to conduct the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections in June and July. So that 100 billion is, we are going to take the money for the conduct of the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections from there. Secondly, as you are aware, the Commission is introducing a new technology in the electoral process, and it is a multifunctional technology that will take care of issue of voter registration, issue of accreditation of voters, and issue of uploading or transmission of election results. So we are going to acquire this new technology afresh. As you heard the chairman say, we have retired a smart card reader because it's no longer serving us the way we want. So this new technology has to be acquired, and our projection is that since we now have a total of 176,846 polling units, we need at least 200,000 beavers for the purposes of this election, and we have to make provision for these things early enough, place orders for them, and then bring them in, and it will take a lot of money to acquire this technology. But what is important is that the moment you acquire these beavers, it serves, you don't have to worry about voters registration anymore. You don't have to worry about acquiring a new accreditation device. You don't have to worry about acquiring a new device for the transmission of election results. And it may last the country for 2 or 3 electoral cycles before you have a much more modern technology. So it will take a lot of money, but I think that it's a one-off thing. And the moment we do this, next time you will see it in the budget. How
much of this is really a one-off? How much of the 305 billion naira is really a one-off?
Well, there are some peripherals that we need to acquire. Now, you see, we've categorized the budget into 3 phases: the pre-election phase, the election phase, and the post-election phase. During this particular election, pre-election phase, one, we have to monitor the conventions and primaries and congresses of political parties. We are conducting continuous voters registration exercise, and this thing will go on for over a year, and we have to accelerate that. We have to also prepare for the election. We have to renovate some of our offices, our 774 local government offices. Some of them are in complete disrepair. We have to also and as you are aware, some of our offices were burnt during very difficult circumstances, during the NSAS period, during the by unknown gunmen, and also through sheer acts of brigandage. So we have to do all these things. And then there are so many other activities we have to undertake now. As we are also aware, this commission provides generating cells for our registration area centers. We provide GP tanks for our registration area centers. So there are so many things that we need to put in place before the elections. And then during the elections, we have to print ballot papers to currency standards, print result sheets with all sorts of security features, store these things in the central bank. And central bank is not a charity organization. We have to pay for warehousing and storage. So there are so many things we need to do before, during, and after elections.
So the cost of our elections is this high because of, I mean, the fact that it's been very difficult to conduct, how will I put it now? I mean, to just rely on people being sincere is as a result of, I don't want to say our dishonesty, but lack of sincerity in terms of, you know, how we conduct ourselves whenever elections are close by. Is that correct?
Well, it's part of it. In some countries, and I need to be very honest with you, in some countries, presiding officers come to the polling units in the morning from their houses, and they come with the ballot boxes, come with the result sheets, come with the ballot papers. And at the end of the day, when elections are over, they pack up and then they go to the collation center. Nobody even accompanies them because of the trust in the electoral process, because of the trust in the system. But here, we have to keep on hiding. The moment these ballot papers arrive the country, they have to go straight to the central bank, where they will be stored until 2 or 3 days. And then we carry all the representatives of the political parties to the central bank, then go and show them the result sheets and the ballot papers as they arrived. They have to take the serial number of everything that we have provided before these things are moved to the various local governments and then moved to the various registration area centers before they go to the polling units on election day. So it's a problem.
It's a pretty tedious process.
It is a very, very tedious process.
But
yes.
some of the things that you've just said is that when it arrives from outside of the country, why are we printing ballot papers outside of Nigeria?
We don't print all ballot papers outside Nigeria. Sometimes when you have a presidential election, the sheer volume of things to be printed is so much that I do not think that any of the security printers in Nigeria can handle that sheer volume. Not only that, the trust deficit in the electoral process makes it imperative for us to keep on hiding. And I use the word, for us to keep on hiding. The security features have to be different. The color coding for each local government has to be different, and so on and so forth. And we don't want a situation where we give out a contract for the printing of ballot papers and result sheets, and some political interests will be moving from one security printer to the other within the country, trying to find out where we are printing some of these ballot papers and result sheets, and then use some rogue elements within some of these companies in order to compromise the quality of our result sheets, or to compromise the secrecy of the color coding, and so on and so forth. So it still boils down to the trust issue in our electoral process. So some of the ballot papers and result sheets are printed in the country, depending on the type of election, depending on the sensitivity of the election involved, and also depending on the quantum of things to be printed. So if we have small by-election, for instance, in just North Bassa Federal Constituency, there's a high possibility that the ballot papers and the resources will be printed by one of the security printers within the country, in which case the Commission has the capacity to police and monitor the printing to make sure that nothing goes wrong in terms of the color coding of the ballot papers and the resources, and also in terms of the security features that are normally embedded within these documents.
Shouldn't we then be looking to increase the capacity of our security and printing companies?
Well, it's an issue of the level of infrastructure within the country, and some of these security printers are also private ventures. Yes, we have our own national security printing company, but there's a limit to what they can do because they also do some other security printing, and you know the band within which some of these documents are printed is very narrow. You cannot print all the ballot papers and resources for a presidential election and keep them for maybe 2-3 months. It doesn't make sense because the implication is that you are going to keep these things in the central bank for a very, very long time. So I believe that as our level of technology increases, as the infrastructural issues in the country appreciates, there's a possibility that we may increasingly begin to print most of our security documents within the country.
So 305 billion naira, you must admit, is a lot of money. Do you admit it's a lot of money?
No, it's a lot of money, definitely,
okay,
yes.
so I'm just wondering what share of that is going to be spent here in Nigeria, because some people will say that that is something that could stimulate the printing economy. I mean, that's one. Then two, how do we ensure competitive prices? Because I imagine that a lot of contractors are already looking to make their bids to INEC. How do we know that INEC is not going to be, engaging in a bazaar, but looking for the best prices for the best product at a cost which will ultimately be of value to Nigerians?
Well, if you look at INEC's budget, for instance, you can see that during the 2019 general election, the Commission deployed over 1 million ad hoc staff. And these ad hoc staff some of them have to be housed. We have to pay for their feeding. We have to pay for their allowances, and we have to pay for their movement. So payment of over 1 million ad hoc staff is much. And I'm talking about a situation and during a period when we had slightly over 119,000 polling units. Now we have over 176,000 polling units. So that definitely will increase. Secondly, INEC must conform to procurement procedures and procurement processes in relation to some of these items. And it goes through some rigorous processes. Most of the items we use are advertised, and we invite competitive bidding. And then all the procurement procedures and processes are adhered to. So it's not an issue of bazaar. Some of these things we have experience in carrying out some of these issues and some of these processes. So they are not new.
Let's flip this to Lagos, and I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you.
Thank you, Mokwe. Mr. Okoye, the issue of trust that you raised the other time is interesting to me. How significantly would you say that the introduction or inclusion of technology into our electoral process has helped to stem that tide of trust deficiency in our electoral system?
Well, this commission is completely committed to the introduction of technology in the electoral process. And we want to deepen democracy through the use of technology. Now, and I will give you a very practical example. At this point in time, any political party that concludes its party primaries has to submit the list and personal particulars of its nominated candidates electronically. So the implication is that the moment the deadline for the submission of the list and personal particulars of the candidates elapse, we shut down the portal, and no other political party and no other interest can access the portal of the commission. But before this particular period, the time for a submission of the list and personal particulars of candidates is a huge issue within the commission. Sometimes different factions of a particular political party will come and fight in the premises of the commission relating to the having conducted multiple primaries, having conducted factionalized primaries, and so on. So the introduction of technology in the party nomination processes has eased that particular process. So nobody can now come and say, oh, you know, I came before time, my list was not accepted, and so on and so forth. That is one. Secondly, pool agents or party agents, political parties now submit their addresses, their names, and their photographs electronically. So the issue of having ghost party agents or rogue party agents at the polling units has completely been stemmed. The civil society groups and organizations, the media also apply for accreditation now electronically. So we are able to assess some of these things, and it has reduced to the barest minimum what I call pernicious human interference in the electoral process. So it is really, really significant. And as you can see from the Anambra governorship election, the introduction of the BVAS has been the clincher. Now, if you come to the polling unit with a permanent voter's card, and you say you are the registered voter, we check the voter's register to see whether your name is there. If we see the name there, then we check your fingerprints. If your fingerprint matches, we give you a ballot paper, you go and vote. If your fingerprint does not match, we now check your facials. If your facial matches, we give you the ballot paper, you go and vote. If it doesn't match, we check the QR code at the back of the permanent voter's card. If he brings out their biometrics and everything and it matches, you go and vote. If it does not match, if these three processes take place and it does not match, the implication is that you are a ghost voter, or you are not the person you claim to be, or you are just engaged in identity theft, and we ask you to go away. So the introduction of technology has to a tremendous extent obviated some of the manual and human elements that we experience. And the moment we accelerate with technology, definitely some of these issues relating to trust in our electoral process will be completely obviated. So we are clear in our minds that we are in the right direction, and that the introduction of technology in the electoral process will help tremendously in bringing trust and credibility to the electoral process.
How has this proposal for 305 billion been received by the National Assembly?
Well, when we went to the National Assembly, the members of the National Assembly made it very, very clear that they are also committed to a credible electoral process, and that they don't want a situation where the issue of funding will become an issue in relation to the electoral process. And also made it very clear to us that the president has also publicly stated that funding will not be a challenge for the conduct of the 2023 elections. So I think that they appreciate what the issues are, they understand what the issues are, and they also understand the fact that our elections have been completely staggered. Either in January or February, we have 8 by-elections to conduct. And then thereafter, in February, on the 12th of February, we conduct the area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory. And then we face Ekiti and Osun governorship elections before we even get to the 2023 general election. So all year round, this commission is conducting elections, and elections are capital intensive. Not only that, let me tell you something. When we prepare for a presidential election, we also prepare for a presidential runoff. In case no candidate scores majority of lawful votes and no candidate gets the mandatory 25% requirement in 2/3 of all the states of the federation. The same thing with governorship elections. We prepare for every governorship election, and we also prepare for a governorship runoff, because the band between the time you do the election itself and the time you do a runoff is just 21 days. Before, it was 7 days. But the National Assembly, in their wisdom, increased it to 21 days, which gives us some able room to engage in reverse logistics and remobilize. So it's a huge venture. And they understand these issues, and they received it well. In fact, the dominant opinion was that if the cash flow is okay, if the country can afford it, if we still need additional resources to make sure that we get the elections right, that the National Assembly will be ready to listen to us.
Well, we'll see how, we sincerely hope that, you know, at the end of the day, the conduct of the elections will justify the humongous amounts of money, you know, being appropriated for them. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Festus Okoye is a National Commissioner at INEC and also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education at the same institution. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily once more.
I appreciate this opportunity.